Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Nichiren continues, however, it is now some 2,200 years since the Thus Come One's passing. For many years, the five impurities have flourished, and good deeds in any connection are rare. Though a person may do good, in the course of doing a single good deed, he accumulates 10 evil ones. So that in the end, for the sake of a small good, he commits great evil, quote unquote. And yet, in his heart, he prides himself on having practiced great good. Such are the times we live in. So there we go with that good and evil crap again. But please understand, what Nichiren is defining, again, it's not good or bad karma, right? Everything in Buddhism relates to our enlightenment and our practice of enlightenment. Nichiren is speaking to Buddhists, not people who are completely unaware. So when he talks about good acts or evil acts, he's talking about the actions that we take. Remember, 3,000 realms in a single thought moment, lots of actions, most of which we're completely unaware of. But so it's all the more important that our momentum, the direction we're influencing our life, is consistent, because that's what ameliorates the balance sheet, if you will, of actions that take us toward awakening and the enlightenment of others, and actions that impede us, or others, worse yet. Do you see? That's the discussion here. And what he's saying is, in our modern age, as I've said many times, we have so many constant distractions. And don't blame the phone and the internet. I mentioned those things just to illustrate how many avenues of distraction we have. But the meaningful distractions are what our mind is doing, collecting those distractions, replaying those. Yeah, as many sources of distraction as we have in our lives, our modern lives. Our minds and our brains are repeating, manipulating, adding, amalgamating, separating, building databases in multitudes on each one of those distractions. It's unfathomable, the muck, the fog of the samsaric mind. And this is what Nichiren is indicating when he says, in that whole fog, you do something kind for somebody, but you're unaware of all of the things that you've done that are negative and creating obstacles for yourself and those others. And the good that you think you may have done is almost irrelevant, or perhaps even an obstacle, but you are unaware of the stack, the fog that you've created, on which you suppose that to be a positive thing, when in fact you may be just adding to the negative balance sheet. He's just indicating how difficult it is to remain myoho, focused. Thank you for your efforts in regard to what Nichiren just said. Yeah, Buddhism ain't easy, is it? It's simple, but it ain't easy. So thank you. Thank you for your practice. Thank you for maintaining your practice and helping to grow this Sangha. You know, when you like and subscribe, you help make this Sangha more easily found for so many people out there that are looking for answers, help, support. And our Sangha, it's international. It's all over the world. So really, I mean it when I say thank you. It's awesome what you guys are doing. Keep on doing it. And let's see if we can't read on here in this Go Show and find moments of inspiration, things that may relate to our very lives. Often when we read Nichiren correctly, it seems so current, right? Moreover, you were born in the remote land of Japan, a tiny island country in the east, separated by 200,000 ri of mountains and seas from the country of the thus come one's birth. And you are a woman, burdened by the 5 obstacles and bound by the 3 obediences. How indescribably wonderful, therefore, that in spite of these hindrances, you have been able to take resolve in the Lotus Sutra. You see how everything Nichiren talks about, or Buddhism for that matter, relates to the simple dedication of our minds on enlightenment versus hindrances, to use this word, to that goal. That's your divide of where language tends to be good, evil. I don't agree with those words, but you're going to see them constantly as you read through the scholarship of Buddhism. Understand that that is a cultural bias. Just understand what it's standing in for. Working toward awakening or working to get in the way of it. That's all that means. Because in our practice of Buddhism, what is our goal other than enlightenment? You see, it's simple. Even the wise or the learned, Nichiren goes on, such as those who have pored over all the sacred teachings propounded by Shakyamuni Buddha in the course of his lifetime, and who have mastered both the exoteric and esoteric doctrines, are these days abandoning the Lotus Sutra and instead reciting the Nembutsu. Why? Well, probably for the very reason, I don't know what's going on with my eyes today, I apologize. The very reason I was just illustrating. That it's simple, but it's difficult. It's difficult because this simple concept of enlightenment, as it relates to our samsaric life, is abundant with tripwires and hindrances. And negotiating those hindrances, seeing through those hindrances, avoiding them altogether, and slowing down their propagation in our moment-to-moment instantiations of potential is the business of maintaining of mind of Buddhahood. That's why it's called the Buddha way. It's not the Buddha point. It's the Buddha way, because time, space, the construct of life, momentum, constantly is being influenced by myriad distractions. Distractions from what? Our singular goal of Buddhaness, enlightenment. And if somebody tells you, well, stop worrying about it. Wait till you die. Just chant Amida Buddha's name all day long. It might make you feel better. And when you die and you're out of this hellhole, you'll go to that pure Buddha land. That's not Buddhism, my friends. That's religion. That's magical, mystical baloney. But many traditions, right? Because this is the hubris of man, wanting to feel eternal, right? These leftovers from Hinduism, like the bardos and all of these stages of death and blah, 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 blah. It's all magical thinking. It's not real. It's not what's happening. Buddhism is very direct, very simple. You're instantiated into into a human, which creates an apparatus with the environment and the local organism here to emerge a mind of observation, witness, and cause making. Cause effect, effect. They happen at the same time, right? And with that tool, that sentient mind, we can interact with the process of life itself. Wow! How amazing is that? Nothing else can do that. But without knowing that, we tend to piss it away. Because it's too easy to go for the cookies and the ice cream. It's too easy to go for our base instincts, right? Food, sex, shelter. That drives us. We call it survival instinct. It's just craving, manifesting. You can call it a million things if you want. The bottom line is, what is it doing? It's obfuscating what's our potential for enlightenment, for a complete manifestation and experience of the total potential of life, instead of just the base things. Wow, I lived 80 years so I could eat, have sex, and own stuff. Wow, congratulations, great life. Many people think that that's the most you can do. A lot of people think that this life is all about suffering. That's what it's for. How pathetic is that? Buddhism, Shakyamuni says, doesn't have to be. It's change your mind. Observe the magnificence of the process, and you won't be weighed down, attached to, obsessed by all of those. They're just moment to moment. It's gone. Get in the flow. Everything's exciting here. Everything's a suchness. It's a temporary manifestation. Don't get hung up. Namo Myo Renge Kyo. Wow, there's no magic there. That's just strict observation, isn't it? Even the wise or the learned, as I said earlier, such as those who have pored over the sacred teachings of the Master Buddha, they end up going the easy way, Nembutsu. Certainly in Japan in his day, that was the case. There's a lot of that going on today. There's other sects that were going on in Nichiren's time that he clearly eschewed, but they're still existing today because, I don't know, fashion, ease, ego. They're not about Buddhism. They call themselves Buddhists, but what good karma you must have formed in the past, then, to have been born a person able to recite even so much as a verse or a phrase of the Lotus Sutra. There's that language barrier thing again. What good karma you must have formed in the past. Right? How should that read? How would I interpret that sentence? How would I translate that differently? You didn't form any good karma. What you did is you influenced karma in a positive way. Oh, same thing? No. See, we don't create karma. I just put up a document on threefoldlotus.com. I thought I'd talk about it today, but here it is. It's relevant again. Questions come up from time to time about karma personal versus karma environment. How does our individual practice affect or influence our environment, right? This is a bit of a tripwire for especially beginners. That unity of self and environment, it's not obvious. It's not obvious because samsarically we see ourselves as individual, unique units. And to a degree, because we're a formation of the total, the word I use is local. I think that's kind of works the mind a little differently than saying unique individual. We're really not. We think of ourselves that way. That's the tripwire of a self, an identity, and an ego that we keep trying to maintain. We're just a local, moment-to-moment manifestation of the engine of life. Right? How did Joni Mitchell say? In the Woodstock song, we are stardust. Yeah, it's just, we're made of all the same stuff. We're just a local assembly that has its tendencies and conditions, and we have a sentient mind to observe the way we're expressing that potential. And we can influence it. That's our agency. Wow, we can actually direct it, affect it. It's not like flipping a switch, but over time we can. What's the goal? Enlightenment. Buddhaness. Right? So, what positive influences toward enlightenment you must have made impressions on, influences on your karmic stream, the karmic stream of which you are a part, that you were able to encounter the Lotus Sutra. Yeah, the Lotus Sutra has been here over, 2,700 years approximately, right? 27 centuries. So it's not like it should be hard to find. What's keeping people from finding it? Or finding it and not paying attention to it? It's only one thing: mind, sentience. Are you sentient? Do you understand what sentience is? Or are you just plodding along through identity? When I read over your letter, I felt as though my eyes were beholding something rarer than the Udambara flower, again with the Udambara flower. Something even scarcer than the one-eyed turtle encountering a floating log with a hollow in it that fits him exactly, another reference to an Expedient Means story. Moved to the heartfelt admiration, I thought that I would like to add just one word or one expression of my own rejoicing, endeavoring in this way to enhance your experience, your reward, your merit. I fear, however, that as clouds darken the moon or as dust defiles a mirror, my brief and clumsy attempts at description will only serve to cloak and obscure the incomparably wonderful rewards you will receive. Being as I'm just a human with words constructed of my own thoughts, may not align with yours, the very example he gave to start with of men thinking they're doing good, really adding to the obfuscation instead. He's seeing that in his own attempts. What humility. And the thought pains me that I would somehow, even by trying to congratulate you and support you, that somehow you might interpret that, I might say it in an improper way that to you becomes an encumbrance. Right? It's just like, very simply, you pay someone a compliment and somehow their feelings are hurt and you don't understand what. Or they don't want to talk to you anymore because they're embarrassed, they're shy, they don't like compliments. That's their issue. But it was sparked by your attempt, although good. See, words are so difficult. Another reason why the first thing we must do as practitioners of Buddhism when we greet each other, before we say anything, Daimoku Sancho, or Daimoku however long you want. Daimoku should always be the first thing at our encounters with people who don't know Buddhism, with people who do know Buddhism, because that's the only way to at least make an attempt to crack that Gohanzen door in our mind so that clarity, Buddhism, Buddhahood can influence understanding. To understand what? Attitude and intent. With this clumsy communication we call language. Yet, in response to your question, he says, I could scarcely remain silent. Please understand that I am merely joining my one drop to the rivers and the oceans, or adding my torch to the sun and the moon, hoping in this way to increase even slightly the volume of water or the brilliance of the light. He really, really is sincere about helping her understand and move toward the depth of her practice, right? But he's painfully aware of cultural stigma, word stigma, opinions, so on and so forth. Right? The cultural stigma is very simply, he's a man, she's a woman. There's so much cultural stigma loaded in that. How do we get around it, over it, right? Pierce through it. He goes on, first of all, when it comes to the Lotus Sutra, you should understand that whether one recites all 8 volumes, or only one volume, one chapter, one verse, one phrase, or simply the daimoku, or the title, the rewards are the same. Because Buddhism is about attitude and intent. Buddhahood is Buddhahood is Buddhahood. It's not the words. The recitation is important, but always, 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 always with a sense of, right, reverence, dedication, confidence. It is like the water of the great ocean, a single drop of which contains water from all the countless streams and rivers, or like a jewel, wish-granting jewel, which, though only a single jewel, can shower all kinds of treasures upon the wisher. Of course, this is based on folklore, right? And the same is true of 100, 1,000, 10,000, or 1,000,000 such drops of water or such jewels. A single character of the Lotus Sutra is like such a drop of water or such a jewel, and the 100,000,000 characters are like 100,000,000 such drops or jewels. Right? He's already told us the 69,384 characters that make up the 28 chapters of the Lotus Sutra are each and every one myo. Formation. The energy in formation. The only remainder to that is form. That's what we're experiencing. On the other hand, a single character of the other sutras, Nimbutsu, Zen, so on and so forth, or even just the other sutras, which are translations of Shakyamuni's sermons, or the name of any of the various Buddhas, Amida or Vairochana, so on and so forth, is like one drop of water of a particular stream or river, or like only one stone from a particular mountain or a particular sea. One such drop does not contain the water of countless other streams and rivers, and one such stone does not possess the virtues that inherit in innumerable other kinds of stones. There's a typo there, I don't understand. So this is the Kool-Aid analogy, right? The, what do they call it? The Karma-Aid analogy. I think that's in that Self and Environment document that I posted. Yeah, you should check that out. It's free. You can download it or read it online. It's just a PDF. It's like 4 pages, maybe 8 pages. Therefore, when it comes to the Lotus Sutra, it is praiseworthy to recite any chapter you have placed your trust in, whichever chapter that may be. Generally speaking, among all the sacred teachings of the Thus Come One, none has ever been known to contain falsehoods. Yet, when we consider the Buddhist teachings more deeply, we find that even among the thus come one's golden words, there exist various categories, such as the Mahayana and the Hinayana, the provisional, the true teachings, the exoteric, the esoteric doctrines. These distinctions arise from the sutras themselves, right? And accordingly, we find that they are roughly outlined in the commentaries of the various scholars and teachers. To state the essence of the matter, among the doctrines propounded by Shakyamuni Buddha in the 50 or more years of his teaching life, those put forward in the first 40 or more years are of a questionable nature, not because he was incorrect, but because questionable, again, I question the word usage, but they're questionable in that they're incomplete. They're provisional steps of learning and training to get to the ultimate teaching, the Lotus method, right? We can say so because the Buddha himself clearly stated in the Immeasurable Meaning Sutra, the opening sutra to the Lotus, quote, in these more than 40 years, I have not yet revealed the truth, end quote. Direct quote from that sutra, right? And in the Lotus Sutra, the Buddha himself proclaims concerning its every word and phrase, quote, honestly discarding expedient means, I will now preach only the unsurpassed way, the ultimate method, end quote. Moreover, to make the point again, many treasures Buddha sprang up from the earth to add his testimony, declaring the Lotus Sutra of the Wonderful Law, so on and so forth. All that you have said, Shakyamuni Buddha, have expounded is the truth, end quote. Remember the Treasure Tower chapter? And the Buddhas of the 10 directions all gathered at the assembly where the Lotus Sutra was being preached and extended their tongues to give further support to the assertion that not a single word of the Lotus Sutra is false. It was as though a great king, his consort, and his most venerable subjects had all with one accord given their word. And of course, you know the analogy of the tongues when they is the word being spread, being taught, being propagated, right? I see a lot of dropped frames. I apologize for hitches in the video. I will get a more powerful computer one of these days. I have heard rumors, and maybe some of you know this, I have heard from a video maker that I watch on YouTube saying that the paid version of Vinci Resolve, which is what I use, I don't use the paid version, I use the free version. He was alluding to the fact that when you pay for the software, there are vast improvements, not only in tools, which I'm not that complicated in these videos, but it caught my ear, he said, in performance, that it actually works much faster. I'd never heard that before. If any of you have experience with DaVinci Resolve, the free version versus the purchased version, as far as performance specifically, that may be justification enough. That would be cheaper than waiting to build the perfect video editing computer that maybe if I simply put the money into the software, I might get rid of a lot of these stupid glitches like skipped frames. Let me know if you know anything about that. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts, your experiences, right? All right, back to Nichiren. Where was I? Suppose that a man or a woman who has recited even a single word of the Lotus Sutra were to be dragged down by the unfathomably heavy repercussions of karma from committing the 10 evil acts. Now, if you're reading along with me, you know I changed that sentence. And the 5 cardinal sins are the 4 major offenses and falls into the evil or the lower paths, right? Samsara has total grip on you. Even if the sun and moon should never again emerge from the east, even if the great earth itself should turn over, even if the tides of the great ocean should cease to ebb and flow, even if broken stones are made whole, and even if the waters of the streams and rivers cease to flow into the ocean, no woman who believes in the Lotus Sutra could ever be dragged down by worldly faults and fall into the lower paths. So what does that word salad mean? Simply this. If the word believe is used here, I'm going to say confidence. If your resolve, your determination, and your confidence, whether it's behind your scholarship of all of the teachings or just a phrase of the Lotus Sutra, if you commit your confidence and your resolve to Namo Myoho Renge Kyo, it doesn't matter what mystical, magical things are imposed on your mind, like the earth turning over and rivers backing up, and right? None of those things could happen. But even if you were to be wrapped around with that rhetoric, it wouldn't affect you. It wouldn't affect you. Your determination in Namo Myoho Renge Kyo, your determination in the Lotus Sutra, your determination in your favorite chapter, your knowledge, your confidence in your enlightenment through your practice of the Lotus Sutra, it's unassailable. So long as you have confidence. That's not an outlandish thing to say when you break it down this way, right? If a woman who believes in the Lotus Sutra should ever fall into the lower paths as a result of jealousy or ill temper or because of excessive greed, then the Duskam One Shakyamuni, the Buddha Many Treasures, and the Buddhas of the 10 Directions would immediately be guilty of breaking their vow, the vow that they upheld over the span of countless kalpas, never to tell a lie. Their offense would be even greater than the wild falsehoods and deceptions of Devadatta or the outrageous lies told by Kokalika. But how could such a thing ever happen? Thus, a person who embraces the Lotus Sutra is absolutely assured of its rewards. Everything he's saying is about building confidence, isn't it? Number one. On the other hand, even if one does not commit a single evil deed throughout one's entire lifetime and observes the 5 precepts, the 8 precepts, the 10 precepts, the 10 good precepts, the 250 precepts, the 500 precepts, oh my goodness, you're such a good little scout, or countless numbers of precepts, even if one learns all the other sutras by heart, makes offerings to all the other Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and accumulates immeasurable merit. Oh, you're such a good scout. If one but fails to put one's resolve in the Lotus method, or if one has resolve in it, but considers that it ranks on the same level as the other sutras and the teachings of the other Buddhas, or if one recognizes its superiority, but constantly engages in the other religious disciplines, that's in the translation, practicing the Lotus Sutra only from time to time, because it's part of my collection, I check it out. Or if one associates on friendly terms. Now, this is important. I've been invited to speak in centers of other religions, even claiming to be universal religions or Methodists or all sorts of religions around. I'm in the Bible Belt. And I've been invited to go and speak. But I won't set foot in their centers. I will not do it. My refrain is always the same. If somebody in your congregation is interested in Buddhism, let them come to me. If they can't make that effort, then anything I say will be irrelevant to them. They will use it as fodder against Buddhism. Not against me. I could care less what they think of me. But just as Nichiren was just saying, no matter how eloquent I may try to speak, their mind is set in another place. And they will use my words, no matter how eloquent, against Buddhism, creating massive obstacles. I can't allow for that to happen. But if they make just the smallest effort to come to my school, then I can impose upon them to chant before we speak. And in the presence of this Butsudan, no matter how I speak to them about Buddhism, there will be an honest, clear transfer of energy, confidence, enlightenment that we will experience together. What they do with that when they leave, that's on them. But they cannot take that and, well, I suppose they could speak poorly of Buddha. They could get scared out of their pants. But it's still their individual experience, right? They're the only ones who heard my words transmitted in the light of Gohonzon. So, or if one associates on friendly terms with monks of the Nembutsu, not other religions, but religions claiming to be Buddhism, Nembutsu, who do not have confidence in the Lotus Sutra but slander it, one and the same. If you don't have confidence in the Lotus Sutra, once again, Nichiren nails this point, but instead slander it. How do you slander it? By going over to the Nembutsu and being friendly with them. Just being friendly with them. Their influence will penetrate you. There it is again, this constant refrain that I have with you guys, that our actions, our enlightenment radiates from us. We influence our environment all the time. With words, yeah, but just entering the room. Or if one thinks that those who insist the Lotus Sutra does not suit the people's capacity in the latter age are guilty of no fault, then all the merit of the countless good acts one has performed throughout one's life will suddenly vanish. You will have betrayed your own enlightenment. Moreover, the rewards resulting from one's practice of the Lotus Sutra will for some time be obscured, and one will fall into the great citadel of the Avicii hell, right back in samsara, as surely as rain falls from the skies or rocks tumble down from the peaks into the valleys. So it's not just a matter of being resolved and confident in your practice of the Lotus Sutra, but it's also to be very alert, constantly engaged with your Buddha way so that you can repel, avoid the energies of distraction pulling you away. Must be vigilant is the word I was looking for. Even if one has committed the 10 evil acts or the 5 cardinal sins, so long as one does not turn one's back on the Lotus Sutra, one will without doubt be reborn in the Pure Land and attain Buddhahood. And where are you reborn? It's not after death. It's in the next moment. Moment to moment, moment. Birth, death, birth, death, birth, death, birth, death, birth, death. It's a measure of time that only occurs in a sentient mind. On the other hand, we read in the sutra that even if one observes the precepts, embraces all the other sutras, and believes in the various Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, if one fails to take resolve in the Lotus Sutra, one is certain to fall into the evil paths or lower paths. Limited though my ability may be, when I observe the situation in the world these days, It seems to me that the great majority of both lay believers and members of the clergy are guilty of slandering the correct teaching. There's such a lack of conviction. It's the only reason that the Lotus method isn't spreading more quickly. Not quickly enough for Nichiren, certainly. Not quickly enough, as Nichiren would say, for Japan. So, we still have a little ways to go to finish here. But he's really addressing this wife of Hikidaigaku Saburo Yoshimoto. He's about to say, well, to return to your question. So that's a good turning point in the discussion. I think this is where we'll pause. As I said before, though no chapter of the Lotus Sutra is negligible, among the entire 28 chapters, the Expedient Means chapter and the Lifespan chapter are particularly outstanding. So this is the basis for Gongyo, right here. It's not the only place he mentions it, but here it is, right? So that's the basis of this letter anyway, and we'll talk more about that in the next podcast. Is it clear to you that all of this discussion about positive, negative, good influence, bad influence, resolve, doubt, that all of it is really under the umbrella term karma? Is that gelling for you? Because that's what it is. Again, please avail yourself of the document, the button on the course study materials page on threefoldlotus.com is called Self v Environment. V for verses, self versus environment. And it's a lone button right now. It doesn't have a, anyway, it's all alone in one line. Self v environment. Check that document out. See if that doesn't, if there's not some rhetoric or words that I put into that document that maybe will turn the light on karma and what it actually is, as opposed to the plethora of misunderstanding and misuse, even in these documents. Yeah. It's just so misunderstood. In the early days, and I'll say this just to close, in the early days of teachings, even Shakyamuni, the interpretation, not Shakyamuni, but the interpretation of his dialogue about karma, again, you're talking about Hinduists, right? The Brahmins had a lot of power over the populace because of their mystical, magical interpretations, hundreds of deities, and their imposition on the citizens of India to tell them what their lives would be, the limitations of their lives. They still have arranged marriages today. It's still part of that, the elders know best, and you're just ignorant. And entire castes of society are ignorant, kept so. It's super authoritarian, right? And the flip side of authoritarianship is equally disgusting, if not more, is that once you start commanding people to be a certain way, people quickly find comfort in being told what to do. So they want authoritarian regimes. How frustrating then to bring this ultimate liberation philosophy of Buddhism into that environment. Consider that. Think about that when you read these things. So early on, many traditions of Buddhism took karma to mean that you got what you got. That if you were hindered in any way, whether it was well, socioeconomic, right? That was your karma. Boom. And I know you still hear that today. But the difference is, the key difference that these traditions and religions don't get or don't propagate is that Shakyamuni was talking about the strong energy, samsaric energy of formations with tendencies and conditions. But what he didn't say was that was permanent. He especially made sure, even in the Four Noble Truths, that this is not permanent. This is something malleable, that you can influence, that you can alter. Oh, they all conveniently forget that. I don't know how. Because it's so plain to see. But yeah, as I've said before, the very energies that want to be, instantiate, is in itself a craving. We are born of cravings. But the cravings doesn't have to be our existence. They're just what brought us here. And this is what Shakyamuni is saying. Fine. We have that engine of craving, desire that makes it so we keep reproducing the cells in our bodies so that we stay alive and experience. But our mind is free from that process. Our mind doesn't have to be yet another instantiation of craving. Our mind can see with equanimity the entire process with fascination, compassion, right? Yeah, that's what the mind can do. But people who misunderstand karma, they just don't want to go there. When they go to the mind, they use the mind to sift samsara. It's something different than samsara. It's outside of samsara. It's so hard to get craving creatures to make that paradigm shift. But we can do it easily through chanting. The more we do it, the more we open that perception, that sentient mind of suchness, of Buddhaness. Yeah? Thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your practice. Please help support this Sangha. Like, subscribe. That's very important to the YouTube algorithms. Beyond that, purchases I want to make in software, notwithstanding the cost of just putting this resource together. You guys who buy books, ebooks, who donate through PayPal or Patreon. All these videos are available on Patreon. There's no cost there. Just the portal to provide for you to do one-time or regular donations. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. So grateful for those efforts. Those of you who are doing that, your bounty is greatly appreciated. Take care of your health, keep your practice strong, and I will see you in the next one, okay? Bye for now.